Hey, what's up, everyone? I just want to give you guys some of the tips and tricks, maybe starting a little series of showing you some of the secrets of Path of Building, or rather, just learning how to use it. There's a lot of questions that I get basically all the time that are within the same category of things that can be answered by knowing how to use POB and plugging stuff in and just figuring out how these pieces work together. On top of that, there's also understanding the underlying systems, mathematics, equations and all that go into how the damage is calculated, damage, defense, whatever. And I just want to make a video to be able to point people to that and just here's the answers. Learn it yourself because, that's the main thing that I want to do here. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is how do you tell if an item is better for your build? And we're going to be focused primarily on offense here because that's the number that everyone just gets excited about and they all care about. They want that big DPS number in the corner, but this does apply to defensive characteristics or anything. How do you evaluate what is better? What do you want? What do you care for? We're going to be using my SRS Guardian here, the build that I'm playing at the moment, to evaluate things. And I think this is going to be very instructive as well because this kind of shows some of the limits of scaling, why some things are better than others at certain categories, as well as being able to evaluate, because POB is a little weird about how it shows how certain things, a couple quirks here, we'll say, of how POB shows whether something is better or not. I can't really tell sometimes if it's too complicated, but we can plug things in and use our eyes after things get plugged in to tell if something's better. So let's start with a very, very simple example. How do I tell if a weapon is better for my build? So to start off, I want to show you guys 3 easy ways that you can get an item into Path of Building. First off, we're just going to copy paste from the website. We can actually do this. So we're going to type in wand right here. We're going to type in, use a tilde. We could type minion damage and it'll do a fuzzy search. So you don't have to type the exact thing. I want at least 50% minion damage on a wand. So we find a bunch of wands right here. And then we can click this little plus sign. It's like a photocopier symbol. Little copy item right here. And then you can go just to the items tab. You don't have to click anywhere. Control V, and the item is right there. And actually, if you want to evaluate exactly what you're going to look for, you can click edit before you click save. And you can remove absolutely everything that you don't care about right here. Remove every single line that's below. Leave the default lines right here. This is kind of the base item characteristics. We can just leave the single minion damage line right here. This is the only thing it cares about. It'll show replacing the first weapon, and it'll show on the bottom replacing the second weapon. And the main thing that we care about, it'll give you all the different changes. It'll say what changes to your minions, what changes to the player, and then your full DPS right here. Oh, what is full DPS? Hold on. Let's get to that. Before you want to accurately evaluate your absolute total change to your damage on your character, there's this thing called full DPS. By default, it'll show you what is changing on your main skill right here, what you have selected, but there's a lot of different skills that you may be using on your character that fit together. There may be certain counts of the skill that you have that fit together. For example, Summon Raging Spirit, you'll have 20 of them out at a time. You want it to multiply that by 20. And so you can click this include in full DPS right here. But to get my actual full DPS, for example, I also have the Sentinel of Radiance. He does a little bit of additional damage. And actually, I have Raised Spectre here. Unfortunately, the new Spectres for this league are not in POB yet. So I can't get that accurate at the moment. This gives me 20 Raging Spirits, and I can add my Sentinel in for a little bit of fun. We can see that this puts me at 36 million DPS. So regardless of what I select at the top right here, this full DPS number, this is the total of what we care about. If we're doing damage over time or anything like that, that will also show at the bottom. And so to go back to our item here, we Control V, it's still in our paste, and we can get rid of everything that we don't care about here. We're just looking to evaluate the specific modifier that we care about on this item. This also helps when other people are looking at your POB. This is a bunch of garbage that doesn't change our build whatsoever. So we're going to leave the implicit and the base explicit right there. And we can see the actual change that it does for the build. So if we replace our primary wand here, which has 120% increased minion damage and a bunch of other stuff on it, we'll see that we actually lose 13.5% damage, 4.8 million. But if we replace our shield here, which has very, very little damage on it, we actually gain damage if I did lose my shield. So you want to be looking in the right item slot that you're about to replace, and then you can use that to evaluate. You can also see the difference if you add it to the build right here. You click save, and then it'll be in the dropdown, and you can use this to compare different items as you're just kind of mousing over. You can use that to just evaluate things very easily. hey, is this item better? Is this item better? So that's the very simple thing. Get people all the time send me whispers in game and, hey, is this item good for the build? Is this item good for the build? And all you have to do is paste it in. And for example, even if it's a ghastly eye jewel, you can do the exact same thing. A little bit more complicated if you're running 8 of them here with 3 charms. That's a way that you can evaluate that. The other 2 ways to get the items into POB is you can actually press Control C right here, and it goes into your copy buffer. And so the actual full item will be copied from the game itself. And then you can do the same thing. Then you Control V, and it's right there. It gives your full item with all of the stats and everything. So if you want to take any item out of the game, you can just do that. And you can also craft an item from within Path of Building. So if I want to make a rare wand, you can type it right here, wand, convoking wand, create, and then you can just do this, type minion damage, 50% minion damage right there, add to build, and then you can see this right here, new item, convoking wand, and it'll do the comparison for us. That's how you can get items into POB. If you want to just compare things, you can craft them like that. And you can do this very quickly to just compare, see what's good for the build. And in fact, when you're just mousing over the different slots right here, you're just hovering over it, you can see if I go to +1 all, okay, that gives me 1.6 million DPS. Pretty cool. You can just use this to kind of peruse things and see what's giving me the most DPS. 2.3 million with increased minion damage. All right, cool. And so there really isn't a lot of magic behind picking the best items for a build, trying to discover and figure out the best modifiers. You can just craft new items and then kind of scroll down. Granted, this is assuming a base of a build that fits together and already works, but if you want to discover what might be best for just pushing up the damage or something like that, this is a very easy way to start doing some exploration and discovery. Speaking of which, thank you, Past Me, for writing this in an order that has a good segue. There are many ways in Path of Building for it to auto-sort things and just tell you what is best for your build, for whatever you want to sort for. And an example of that, now granted, you have to use some logic here. You have to use some critical thinking and think, hey, what am I losing by dropping whatever I currently have? What are the quality of life things, utility things, maybe something like spell suppression or life or something that my previous item or anoint has, right? Make sure you're valuing what you're losing there. But if you just want to push the damage, specific defense numbers, anything like that, Path of Building can show you. And so what we can do here, click sort, because it'll sort it into this order right here. A lot easier to find certain things. And we're going to look for our amulet right here. And so you can see we are currently anointing Death Attunement. This gives us +1 Spectre for this build. This is mandatory. We cannot drop this anoint because we're running 5 Spectres at the moment. But if you're just looking for the best anoint for your build, whatever build that you're playing, or alternative anoints, if the one that's recommended in the build that you're following is too expensive for you, you can just click here, sort by full DPS, and Path of Building will sort for you. And yeah, just wait a little bit. It'll do all of the calculations, and it'll tell you what actually does the most damage to your build. So certain things, I changed it to Summon Raging Spirit right here. Sort by full DPS can be flaky. This is helpful to show some of the issues that you can run into sometimes. Path of Building does have some flaky things. We can always do bug reports or anything like that to try to get that fixed. Here we go. So I selected Summon Raging Spirit. I did sort by hit DPS to just focus on just the hit of the Summon Raging Spirit. And we can see it has a heat map right here from red down to gray, showing that Fearsome Force with minion, crit chance, crit multi. This is actually the best scaler at the moment for my build. So this is actually telling me, okay, like I'm currently a non-crit build, maybe starting to think about scaling crit on my build. This is going to be how I take it to the next level. And this can actually be kind of instructive for showing you different things that you could go for. And the nice thing here is it does show the player DPS versus the minion DPS. It looks like Snowforge actually gives me 1.6 million DPS. So it's going to be sorting by the hit DPS and not the player DPS. There's just a little quirk right here you can run into, but again, use your critical thinking. But it looks like Snowforge would actually be the single highest damage that I could get right now for another -5 res to enemies that are chilled or ignited. So yeah, Snowforge looks like it's actually our best damage anoint. But again, we can't lose Death Attunement here for this build because of the utility. All right, and then here's another little secret is you don't need to memorize every single unique in the game. Once you have a base build that is fitting together, that works, of course, having a good library of the uniques in your head is really good, but you can discover and learn new things by using just the uniques and the sorts right here. We can say, hey, give me a helmet that sorts by hit DPS for my build. Let's take a look right here. Oh, okay. Ancient Skull for a minion build. Pretty cool. I can get some more damage on my minions there. Leercast for increased damage. Crown of the Tyrant is, of course, really good. Baron, Maw of Mischief, right? It's sorting by all of the minion helms, showing me things that might do something for my build. Maw of Mischief is only showing up because of the implicit right there, but pretty cool thing that you can do. Of course, uniques have so many unique characteristics that are very, very build specific that you usually can't just slot these in, but it's useful and instructive to kind of sort by that. Look through your gloves, see, hey, are these uniques, particularly if you're playing SSF, you might have a low access to things. And if you want to discover, maybe some uniques that I can farm for that are good for my build, hey, Grip of the Council, 20% Fizzes extra cold. That's pretty cool. That would give me, at my current build, wouldn't give me that much DPS. But at low investment, this is actually really, really good for SRS. You can do some really good exploration and try to figure out uniques that work for your build. That's the core of what I wanted to talk about regarding just the items. Next up, I want to talk about trade for these items. I don't want to go into a ton of detail for this, but this is a quick little cheat code that you can use for particularly jewels. It's pretty good for something like weapons, and jewels can be a little weird sorting for specific things for your body armor and stuff. So I'm just going to show that for damage. So if I click trade for these items here, you'll see this overwhelming page. But what you want to do is click your actual league right here, not have that in Ruthless. And you can click what you want it to search for. Highest stat value is really good. You can also adjust specific search weights. This is telling it, hey, what do you care about the most? What is the modifier that I am looking to search for here? And you can actually tell it, hey, I care about the most of life. I care about the most of energy shield, anything like that. But by default, it will sort by just full DPS, and it'll generate a full search that is just trying to min-max that one stat. And so if I want to search for a Ghastly Eye Jewel, which I have, let's see, what is my weakest Ghastly Eye Jewel? This will actually be really helpful for me too, because my Ghastly Eye Jewels, this is actually my list of things to upgrade for my build. And my jewels, this is my next step for build upgrading right now. And so let's find what looks like my weakest jewel. What is absolute garbage? This one doesn't look very good. This one, they're all like okay right now. This one's definitely my weakest one. The socket number 6. So I can click socket 6 right here, find best, execute. We don't really, we can set a max price, but we just kind of want to see anything right now. Calculating mod weights, and we just let POB do all of the work for us. Probably gonna have to fast forward the video. Nope, never mind. Here we go. And then it'll generate a full search term right here. Control click this. It'll open it in a browser, bring it over here. So there's only so many results that it'll actually show. And you will see here's the full thing that it generated, right? It actually gave us a lot of additional stuff right here. What I usually do to try to simplify this a little bit is I'll remove all of the non-implicit ones below a certain threshold. So these are obviously the best ones for our build right here. And we can actually say, hey, what's the best mod on a jewel for me? Okay, minions deal increased damage if you use a minion skill recently. Yep, that tracks. That's our best. Or just regular increased damage. That is actually the best way to scale my build right now versus then attack speed, then flat cold, flat fizz, right? This is the most common question I get about this build. What is the most valuable flat damage for my build? Now, this is actually not true because I have specters that do really weird stuff with lucky damage where lightning is actually better than cold. But you'll see these are within a couple percent, right? This is 0.46, this is 0.51. Is close enough that I'll take anything. But technically, if I wanted to make this perfect, I would make the lightning damage a little bit higher weight than the cold damage because I know due to the lucky damage from the Spirit of Fortune, just having some insight and an intuition about your build, this can be helpful as well for doing the searching. I like to turn off all the stuff here that I don't really care about. We'll leave the implicits because these are kind of nice to have. A synth jewel might show up, but these ones we can kind of turn off right here. This will simplify the search. And then what it's doing, right, is giving these modifiers a certain amount of weight. So it's saying, hey, this one is weighted at, 10%. This one's weighted at 5%. And then it'll balance based on those. And it'll try to find like the right sum of all those weights for, what the item it shows you when you sort by those. And so what we also want to do, this is the minimum weight that will show up on an item. Start with 20. It was at 17. We're going to start at 20. And our goal here is to get the number lower. We want to get this number below 10,000. In fact, we want to get this number below 500, honestly, if we can. So what we can do is click on sum right here and see what the highest number gets to. And we're going to set something pretty close to that. We're going to set to 40 because we're going to do a little window shopping right here. So we'll set to 40 and we'll see now it has 663 matched. So the minimum that it shows us here is 40. This gives us a lot more that we can kind of window shop right here. That's still a ton. We can scroll down a lot. Let's try to find something kind of reasonable here. All right, let's do 45. We'll get to a reasonable number. 189. Okay. So this is a good number that we can sort by. This will give us very reasonable sums and very reasonable prices for items that we can care about. Now we can sort and then the additional thing you could do right here, you could set a max price. The original time that we searched, it only went to 54, right? When it shows over 10,000, it doesn't give you the entire list of jewels. It'll only give you a subset because the database is going to be hitting too much. If you want to get the best jewels possible, you have to make sure that you set that minimum weight so you get the results matched to at least less than 1,000. And then you'll get the actual best jewels possible. So now we're seeing a max of 67 right here. Really, really expensive ones. And then we can set our max price to something like 2 divines. And this will give us a reasonable jewels that we could purchase. And we're looking at these guys now. And so we can find some diamonds in the rough, though. Maybe there's some really good ones hidden in here that maybe we could just exalt and make it better. Something like this, right? This has an open suffix. Maybe we could exalt some additional damage there and get a ridiculous jewel for our build that's maybe worth as much as that 20 divine one. That is something I wanted to show you guys. The search by best thing is really, really, really good. And then you can do the same thing for weapons or anything. There might be some diamonds in the rough for the weapons. Maybe something that just needs an annulment orb and then a craft, and then you can make it way better. Use this for exploring your build, understanding what the best modifiers are too, right? When it generates that search, it'll tell you what gives you the most damage on your build, and then you can use that to understand what else to go for on your build for your gear upgrades and all that. All right, next up is we're going to talk about how do you find the best support gem for your build. So what you have to do is select your primary skill over here on the left. It's okay to have the include and full DPS and all that, but the calculation gets a little slow and wonky. You're usually just going to be looking for your one primary skill. So if you have it selected over here on the left as your main skill, and then you can turn off support gems, right? This is the very simplest thing. You can mouse over it. It'll tell you how much additional damage you get from this. You can also click right here, and it'll sort by default by how much damage it does. Now, you do have to use a little bit of common sense right here. For example, if it recommends hypothermia, that only works if I'm chilling the enemy, but I'm also using elemental focus, but I do know that I'm running skitter bots, but what if I'm running profane proxy? Okay, the enemy is not chilled, right? You have to understand, is the enemy chilled? Can I use hypothermia? The POB won't tell you everything perfectly. You have to think about it a little bit, but this does tell me that Ruthless is the best next support gem for my build. If I were able to go to 7 support gems, or most commonly in this build, if I can't get 4 blue and 2 red, if I only get 3 blue and 3 red, maybe I can drop something. And then the question is, what do I drop? Well, you can just mouse over the checkbox over here, and it'll tell you the % of damage that you're getting by turning on that gem. So Awakened Ellie Focus is 30% damage, minion damage is 32.8, multi-strike is 24% damage. Okay, but that's a red gem. So we're only looking to dropping blue gems, so it's between Ellie Focus and minion damage, and it looks like Ellie Focus is what we drop, and then we can add in Ruthless support right here, and that is actually nearly as good, right? So Ruthless is 30.6% damage, and well, this is Awakened Ellie Focus. We can actually just type these in to do a little bit of discovery right here. Regular Elemental Focus versus Ruthless right here, right? We can look, this is 30% damage, this is 32% damage. So it's very, very close, and you can use this to do a little bit of discovery on the way that things work. All right, finding the best passives on your build. Fun thing is that this is actually a feature that I modified a little bit. This is actually my one contribution to Path of Building so far, is you can click the show node power. In addition, there's this little drop down, this is what I added, that limits the number of nodes that it searches to speed up the how long it searches. So we want to search by 5 node distance. We have a build that's already fitting together pretty well. We're level 98. There's not that many nodes that we can really stretch for on this build. And so if we click show node power, what it's going to do, and we actually want to, by default, it's going to do a hybrid offense defense. This thing's okay. I actually wish it didn't default to this because it's kind of weird. It'll show red for more damage. It'll show blue for more defense. But what is defense, right? It's kind of, I think it's mostly sorting by like EHP, which is already a fuzzy number in the first place. What we want to sort for, right, is our hit DPS for our Summon Raging Spirit. So we're going to click that. We're going to let it do the resort right now. This might take a little bit, so Hold on a second. All right, so hit DPS does not work. With minions, apparently, there's a little bit of a bug. It's not searching for the summon Raging Spirit hit. It was just sitting there freezing. This whole node search thing is already a little complicated thing that needs some quality of life improvements. But I searched by full DPS, which again, we have the full DPS setting here for the summon Raging Spirit. We're just gonna let it sort here. And the nice thing is by having this drop down at 5, it's only gonna sort for, really close range from our current tree instead of searching the entire tree. Speeds it up a good amount. And then we can click show power report and sort by full DPS. So you can click the full DPS right here. And this, funny enough, this is the exact same thing that we saw when we were searching by Anoint. So we can actually see that per point, most efficient for your passive tree is steeped in the profane. This is increased curse effect. So this gives us 5.4% more damage. If we allocate all 3 of these, this will give us 10 plus 10, 20% increased curse effect. Pretty decent if you want to scale your damage right there. Next up is Snowforged right here. This is the same as our Anoint, but for searching for Anoint, you should use the Amulet interface instead because that will only be searching notables. It'll be much faster. Another fun thing that you can do is actually click Show Unallocated and Clusters. So this will actually search by the best cluster nodes that you want to go for. And unfortunately, it doesn't show you exactly what they are. And unfortunately, it also has clusters that don't exist in the game anymore. So what you want to do, unfortunately, is go to the wiki and type it in. So we could type in Doge's Gluttony right here. So this is currently on the Curse Effect small passive cluster jewels. So if you want to do like 2 additional passive points right here, this would actually be significantly more damage than taking Steeped in the Profane. But again, there's the opportunity cost of losing one of your small cluster jewels, so you have to balance all that. We are using Punishment in the build, we get Culling Strike, and we get Curse Effect on the small passive. So that's not bad to go for. You can search for these. You can do all that. That's how you can discover what are the best cluster jewels for your build as well. You don't need to follow a build guide. You don't need to ask too many questions. You can kind of explore and figure stuff out on your own. You can use this to find the best megalomaniacs for your build, find medium cluster jewels that, a lot of people might be really, really cheap on the market that people aren't using. All right, so next up is actually the main thing I wanted to make this video about. Turned into a whole thing. What is the conditional custom modifiers box? Why is it so powerful? This is kind of the end game boss of everything that we already talked about. The way that modifiers work in Path of Exile and Path of Building is it has a full text-based lexer that parses the verbs and the nouns and everything, and it breaks it down into the component parts. And it actually can understand and read the text that you type in if it's in the exact right format, exact right grammar, and turn that into what is actually happening in the game. I could type in minions deal added lightning damage. I can put that on any item on my character, right? I can put that on my helmet. I can click edit right here, toss it on a helmet, save it, and boom, I get more damage on my helmet. You can put anything anywhere. It knows from the crafting interface what goes where, but you can make these fake items that totally simulate certain things. Like I can just take this helmet and turn it into anything. I can go boom, 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 and I can make this lightning damage. I can make this cold damage, fire damage, and physical damage. And I could actually use this as a tool to kind of explore what is the best for my build, right? If I wanted to just do some Lego playing around with things, a little silly putty. And okay, well, lightning damage is doing that much. Let's do, Control X. Let's save that. Okay, 9.6% from lightning. What do I do? What if I do cold damage? Cold is actually 10.5. Interesting. I know this because I'm running Hatred. Cold is actually better than lightning. Okay, fire damage. I can type this in right here. Okay, fire damage is only 8.8. So I'm scaling fire damage less than both lightning and cold. Play around. This is a total sandbox of trying to simulate what a build is and how a build actually works. Path of Building is not this monolithic thing that specifically tells you how something works in the game. It is a sandbox that is simulating what is going on in the game, and you can use this to explore and discover and improve your knowledge. One of the best ways to do that is with the custom modifiers box. And so what I have typed in here is a lot right now. This actually may be out of date at time of recording. I actually have to double check what's happened in the most recent Path of Building patch notes. For example, the Sentinel of Radiance, when I have him out, and let's double check, we can also turn off show node power right here to speed up our passive tree. If I uncheck this, it doesn't change my EHP at all, right? And there's a little bit of a change, but it's not actually changing my EHP right here for nearly as much as it should. The reason for that is it is not properly calculating that second line 20% of damage from hits is taken from your Sentinel of Radiance before you. And that is just, if you want to stay ahead of POB, understanding truly how your build works when something isn't properly working in there, is we can use this custom modifier box to just type it in ourselves. So we type in 20% less damage taken from hits. This will simulate the defense that we're getting from our Sentinel of Radiance. Scuff this, and you can see that my defense goes down significantly if that is not calculated. We'll see that I go from 12 to 15k Fizz max hit by taking 20% less damage from hits. Something as simple as that. Next up is it does not, and I was actually very surprised, it does not properly calculate what your Animate Guardian is wearing. So I even made a full gear set right here for the Animate Guardian, what he's wearing and all that. And Path of Building, unfortunately, does not calculate all of that stuff in there. That's something that, maybe I might look into for a future PR, because I think this would be really useful. So to actually simulate what my Animate Guardian is doing is I typed in what all of his items do. So the increase the damage, increase the curse effect, this is from the Dying Breath, increased damage, Leer Cast, and the Scorch, this is from the Legacy of Fury Boots. That's a way we can simulate our Animate Guardian. Again, all you really have to do, right, to do this is go to the gear set. You can go to the item right here, or you don't have to go to the gear set, right? You can go to the item right here, and you can just select the text. Unfortunately, if it was crafted in POB, it'll have this extra text in front of it. I can just Control-C, Control-V it, go in here, go down here, and then, do get rid of like the extra flavor text in front of it. Set the roll that you want. If you want a perfectly rolled boots, 50% increased effect of Scorch, and you'll see the damage will actually go up with that modifier there. So that's what you want to do to simulate, like your Animate Guardian, for example. Next up is punishment. So the way that punishment works, and this is a question I've been getting a lot, why are you using punishment? Cursed enemies take 61% increased damage while on low life. This is misinterpreted by a lot of people, I think, by beginners, thinking that this is when you are on low life. It is when the enemy is on low life. And I understand why people are misinterpreting that a little bit. This is a gigantic more damage taken. It's one of the best curses in the game. It has been for a while. I used to use this back on Bane, like a year ago. Back when Bane was still good. Punishment it's a gigantic damage boost that you can't see. The game doesn't tell you that punishment is doing more damage. So unfortunately for punishment, it's really weird. Telling enemies that they have increased damage taken, I don't know if there's a proper incantation for this. So to simulate this is I took half of the value, half that 61% value, and I actually rounded down a little bit because we already have a little bit of a shock. We have like a 10% shock from our skitterbots. We can simulate this by just taking about half the value and rounding down based on the amount of other increased damage taken that we have. Because increased damage taken is its own more multiplier. I already have about 10% from shock. So from the proportional scaling, I did round down. So instead of doing 30.5% right here, and don't do decimals, always round down from decimals because the game does it to you as well. I went down a little bit here to try to simulate how much damage that I'm actually doing on average for when they're not on low life versus when they take a lot more on low life. But if you just want to see the actual damage taken, we can comment this out. You can just click on enemies have low life and we can see 19 million DPS. Again, no, everything's scuffed because I'm changing everything. 19 million DPS, but when they're on low life, I actually go to 30 million DPS. That is how much more damage punishment is making the enemy take when they hit that low life value. To simulate kind of the average between them, we do this 28% more damage, and this puts us at 25. So this is a very rough. We go from 19 to 30, and with the 28% more, we actually go to 25 million right here. And you could actually do 30% more if you had no other increased damage taken. So this would be more accurate, if you had no shock or anything. Since we have shock, I do round down a little bit to try to account for the fact that it's the same multiplier. That's a way that you can kind of simulate conditional buffs that may not show up in the configuration panel right here. Let's see. Also, I have charms in here. Charms are now in the game, I believe. So I can remove those from my custom configuration box. This is me trying to simulate lucky damage. This is my specters, right? So also specters are currently not in the game. So I am manually typing in. Unfortunately, it's kind of weird because my specter level doesn't even show up in PoEDB. So I have to manually look in game. I have to go from town and I see how much flat damage I have. Then I go to my hideout and I look and I add those values into the custom modifier box. Once you get comfortable with doing this type of stuff, it's very useful and instructive to not only understanding your build, but really starting to understand how the game works as a whole. I think that is plenty. I wanted this to be like a 10-minute, hey, here's how you use a custom modifier box, but turned into being a whole fun little educational video. This is really a great way, a good introduction to kind of leaping into more intermediate and advanced path of building interactions and understanding how the game actually works and all the underpinning systems and numbers and all that. And it'll really allow you to explore builds and understand them much, much more deeply. The more that people understand all this stuff, the more comfortable they are with their build, with their path of building, the more easily you can discover things. And the big thing is it'll save you a lot of currency. By doing those trade searches, understanding what's out there, you can find really, really good deals and start to put some pieces together that, hey, I can just buy this wand that has really good stats, but it just needs an annul. Or I can find this ghastly eye jewel that gives me 10% more damage, but it's underpriced right now at like 100 chaos. I can just snag that really quickly and just hit it with an exalt, and maybe it'll get even better. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thank you all of the subscribers and Patreons and all you guys. Appreciate you all, and I hope you guys are having a great 3.23 or whatever league it's in if you're watching this video in the future. So yeah, I hope to see you guys on the stream. Have a good one. Bye-bye.